Alright, so today I'll be presenting my Music 1303 end of semester presentation, and in this presentation I'll be telling you about a particular musician I like and believe we should know more about. So let's get right into the video. So amongst multiple and 1,000 musicians out in the world, who did I choose? On the third slide you can see the image of the musician I chose, and it's this fabulous man who goes by the name Bear McCreary. But before I tell you about why I like him and why we should know more about him, let's learn about the bits and pieces that make Bear McCreary the musician he is today. So McCreary was born on the 17th of February 1979, and not only is he an American musician, but he is also a composer of film, television, and video game scores. He is best known for his work on the reimagined Battlestar Galactica television series, as well as the TV series Outlander and my favorite TV show, The Walking Dead. He has also composed music for other films and shows like God of War, Happy Death Day, Black Sails, the 10 Cloverfield Lane movie, the Cloverfield Paradox, and Godzilla King of Monsters, and that's only a few to name. So how exactly did he get involved in the field of music? Well, McCreary's big entrance into the music field came when he had a chance encounter that led him to film music legend Elmer Bernstein, who recognized a passion for musical storytelling in McCreary. From there, Bernstein encouraged McCreary to study composition at the USC School of Music in Los Angeles, where he took him on as a student. Working under Bernstein, McCreary reconstructed and reorchestrated the score for the 1963 film Kings of the Sun, resulting in a new recording of the music. Now that I've given you a bit of a glimpse of his musical background, I'll now point out three significant features about McCreary that not only explain about what I like about him, as well as explain why we need to know him as an artist. So, in an interview called A Conversation with Bear McCreary, the composer king of Comic-Con, McCreary informs people about his view on music and his background with music. And in this interview, McCreary explains that as a child he grew up listening to film scores the way that many people might listen to pop music, which I personally found really interesting because typically kids would be listening to whatever would be on whatever's top hits list. Regarding his point of view on music, he believes that even though music always plays a crucial role, it's not meant to announce itself. When he conducts his own music, McCreary explains that he wants people to not be aware of it on the first time through. He wants listeners to internalize it and get to the emotion from it. He feels very strongly that music should help create the world that the narrative takes place in. I personally can agree with what he says because I myself believe that musical scores in the background contribute to the making of a story and help drive the emotion into certain scenes in films or movies. And I definitely see examples of this in multiple shows that I watch because there are certain musical scores that either always bring laughter or even tears at times. In addition, he says that he generally loathes music that is anachronistic to a time period. He thinks that a score announcing itself and trying to be cool at the expense of believability. Not to say that it hasn't been done in super cool ways, he says that it isn't his method of approach. This is another thing that I like about him. He knows the method that he likes and he sticks with it while at the same time having an open mind to the different ways on how music is brought to the table. So now that I've told you a bit about McCreary, I'd like to have you listen to two musical clips that showcase who he is. This first clip is titled Death in a Field, and it's from AMC's The Walking Dead, which is a apocalyptic zombie-based show. And here's a little backstory in the scene in which the song was used in. So there's this character, an old guy named Dale, and he's walking in a field when he's attacked and ripped open by a zombie. Gruesome, right? So listen to the song, but make sure you start at 2:22, and before you listen to it, I want you to make sure that you listen to the dissonant string clusters and the distorted banjo lines. And at about 2:30, the music shifts. You can then hear the dulcimer and the piano sounds. The dulcimer, when played with soft little mallets, already sounds a bit like an upright piano, and when it doubles as an actual piano, the resulting combination is this creepy piano-like effect that is unique to The Walking Dead. So now that you've heard the first clip, let's talk about the significance behind it. When McCreary whenever he first saw this scene with producers, he said that he was swept away in shock and emotion because he wasn't sure how to score the music for it. And here's the reason why. So unlike how other deaths in the show were sacrificial, meaningful, or nobleful deaths, Dale's death was in such a trivial manner because the character didn't die saving anyone or for any sacrificial, meaningful, noble purposes. The character just died. McCreary knew that if he wrote big emotional music, it would have undercut the shock and despair of the scene. So to solve this, McCreary said that he withheld the emotional music for as long as he possibly could by underscoring only the horror, using those dissonant string clusters and distorted banjo lines that I told you about earlier. There's nothing special about the music because he says it sounds just like your typical horror cue in the series, and that's what makes the sequence so painful. He holds that same horror-sounding theme until this particular moment happens at 2:30, and if you've ever seen the show, that at 2:30, there's a scene shift where it shifts to this kid named Carl. This is also where the music shifts, because in this short shot we see the weight of Carl's realization crashing in on him. And it's super devastating. The zombie he was playing with and accidentally freed is the one that killed Dale. This singular moment is the end of Carl's childhood and is his emergence as an adult on the show, which is super important because this powerful moment where we're inside Carl's mindset is underscored with the return of the Carl theme, which was played by a solo piano and 2 passes of hammered dulcimer, along with these soft mallets. Reaching the conclusion, the Carl theme instrumentation continues into a new melody. McCreary stated that he wanted this haunting melody to emerge from the blackness, almost like a tunnel of light appearing to take Dale away. In a way, this somber yet beautiful melody tells us that Dale is going to die. It allows the audience to say goodbye, and hearing it played in Carl's instrumentation is a way that tied their fates together. Because even though Dale will die, Carl will live, and this moment will forever define him as a man, saying that there is meaning in Dale's death after all. Now, onto the second clip. This next clip is also from The Walking Dead as well, and it's also about the kid who I mentioned earlier in the last clip, aka Carl. This one is called Carl's Theme, and I briefly talked about it in the last clip, but let's learn some more about it. So Carl's Theme is a short 35-second musical clip, and it was used in the scene when Carl and his father are talking about what lies ahead for them in the future of this new world that they have entered. So click on the link and listen to it. It's pretty short, but I can assure you that even though it's short, it really does have this big impact, so make sure to pay attention to it. And you'll hear that the three piano notes are the same, but it swings into this pretty solo melody that sounds more developed. So just click on that link. Now that you've listened to it, the significance behind this short 35-second clip is that Bear McCreary first created the first 3 simple notes of the piece in the last clip I mentioned, in Death in a Field, and took the chance to develop it into a full version of Carl's theme. In response to the character growth that Carl had undergone after Dale's death, McCreary wanted to compose a more mature version of Carl's theme as well. You can hear that the first 3 notes are the same, but it then progresses into this beautiful new melody performed on a solo piano. McCreary says that the Carl theme is probably the first inherently beautiful theme he'd ever written for The Walking Dead since an earlier episode in the show, because it still preserves that stylistic simplicity that made it so effective in the episode in which Dale died in. He describes it that even though its melody is now extended and emotionally resonant, it's still simple enough that it could be played by 2 fingers on the piano by a small kid. Super simple, but incredibly strong. Alright, since I'm close to the end of my presentation, I'm going to wrap up with an explanation on why I chose Bear McCreary. So the reason why I chose McCreary as the musician I want to talk to you about is because McCreary just so happens to be the musical genius behind my favorite television show, The Walking Dead. He is the musician who produces the scores for the show and does so successfully. I love the musical scores that he creates for the show because they always bring such emotion to the scenes that they are played in by creating the emotion within them and driving the narrative forward. I especially felt this way in the 2 clips that I mentioned earlier because I remember crying in both scenes when they premiered, and also when the music played because of the emotion that they created within the scene. The final reason is because I remembered from class that mostly everyone chose a musician who sang vocally. I don't think I heard anyone mention a musician who wrote film scores, so that is one of the reasons why I chose Bear McCreary. It's important to recognize and know more about the musicians who are the real brainiacs behind the music that support the scenes in films. They don't sing with their voices, instead they write music and compose it. And Bear McCreary just so happens to be one of those brilliant composers. Thank you.